So Tori Henninger, what is BRASS?
BRASS is the domestic violence shelter program that provides services to the Barren River Area Development District, so a 10-county region in Kentucky that services for residential, non-residential, and housing options for individuals who are trying to flee domestic violence.
The coronavirus has impacted every single segment of life, and it has probably intensified the situation for domestic violence abusers and victims. Kind of zoom in on that and share with us what COVID-19 has done for domestic violence.
So I think it's really important for us to recognize that we are dealing with a health crisis within a pandemic. And this health crisis has been going on long before COVID started and will be here long after we create the results for COVID. But within domestic violence, there are always key factors that intensify the abusive homes that people deal with every day. Isolation is a normal factor for domestic violence when you look at rural isolation. So, if you don't have a neighbor who can hear you scream, then they can make sure that you scream. If you are, physically isolated from your family and don't have someone to turn to, then they know that you have nowhere to go. And so will maintain and remain in an abusive relationship just to make sure that your basic needs are also being met. Because everybody has the same basic needs: food, shelter, water. And so that's one of the biggest fears in leaving DV relationships is, what am I going to do just to survive on a daily basis? And so while isolation is normally a factor in domestic violence, when it comes to COVID, it becomes the biggest factor. Abusers have used isolation as a tool of abuse within the COVID-19 pandemic by saying things like, well, all the shelters are closed. No one's answering the crisis line. And so they have a feeling of isolation, that there is no one to turn to. Because when this pandemic first started, everything shut down. Nobody knew what to do. So businesses closed, and there were mandates about what businesses were allowed to open. We all have conversations now about, are you essential? And are you wearing your PPE and all these terms that weren't a thing before March. And that's the thing that we want to make sure people recognize, is that shelters have remained open. Our crisis lines have remained open. The other community wraparound support services have remained open. So legal aid services to help file for protective orders. Isolation was used as a tool because they weren't given full access to be able to find out that we were still open, that we were still taking our calls. BRASS never closed. We never stopped answering our calls. We had to adapt and change, but everyone did, and we still continued on.
Tori, if you or someone you know is the victim of domestic abuse, Barren River Area Safe Space, or BRASS, is there, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, call our crisis line. It's the easiest, simplest way to figure out what services are accessible to you, and we can go from there. If you know someone who you think is in an abusive relationship, make sure that they're aware that we have a 24/7 crisis line that is free and confidential for anyone to call. The state of Kentucky has done a great thing for years in making sure that every Kentuckian has access to services. And we very strictly stand by those confidentiality services so that people can call us without fear of retribution. We won't call you back unless you tell us it's okay. We won't use your name in the media. When I'm doing interviews, I won't say, well, Sally Joe over here just called me the other day. We really want to make sure that people remain anonymous. Our success stories are anonymous.
Gotcha. Tori Henninger is the Executive Director of BRASS, or Barren River Area Safe Space. And as she mentioned, if you or someone you know is the victim of domestic abuse, call their 24-hour hotline. I'm Barbara Deeb. You're watching Coffee Near Me, coming to you via Zoom. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching.